From director George Miller, known for his films about braving the violent and unforgiving wastelands, and also Mad Max, comes perhaps his most fantastical, most ambitious, and most sexually charged film since Babe, Pig in the City. And chances are, you haven't even heard of it, because MGM did dick all to market it. Is it a perfect film? No. But where else are you going to see a giant naked Idris Elba with elf ears continuously fumbling his quest for booty? Just on that idea alone, we should have been seeing Elba's blue genie ass on every screen and billboard in the nation. You done goofed, MGM. Hello and welcome to the Martini Shot. My name is Brandon, and today I will be reviewing the 2022 fantasy romance film 3,000 Years of Longing. But before I do that, let's indulge in a little bit of wish fulfillment with this dazzling golden cocktail I've named Djinn's Oblivion. And hey, if you enjoy movie reviews and movie-themed cocktails, be sure to leave a like and hit the subscribe button if you'd like to help support the channel. For this cocktail, I wanted to be a bit adventurous, lest I become too content like our MC Alethea here. I've looked towards some Middle Eastern inspirations for this cocktail, which has introduced me to a new spirit called arak. Arak is a 12th century Arab invention typically made of two particular ingredients, grapes and anise. This gives it a distinct herbal flavor that usually gravitates towards licorice, similar to absinthe. I understand this may not appeal to the broad spectrum of palates out there, but I found that a mixture of coconut water and lemon juice really reels that anise flavor back, but doesn't completely cover it. It's a tad tart with a faint taste of licorice near the tail end that generates a very unique flavor profile. And to add a little bit of magic to it, I've added a tiny amount of gold luster dust to give it a shiny, glimmering appearance. No mystical slave in a bottle required. Let's get into it. So typically for a drink that's eventually going to end up inside a martini glass, you would typically stir this. However, because I am using some edible dust, I've opted to shake it instead just to make sure that everything integrates properly. If you happen to not have the gold luster dust, you are more than welcome to stir this. You'll pretty much kind of get the same result. So first we are going to start with our alcohol, the arak, which, like I said before, is made with grapes and anise and kind of has a very sweet, herbal, almost licorice taste to it. This one happens to be 50%, which happens to be higher than most spirits you'll come across. Usually your vodkas, tequilas, rums, whiskeys will float between that 40-45%. We're only gonna do 1.5 ounces. Next, we're gonna do our coconut water. This is gonna kind of help reel back that anise taste of the arak, and we are gonna be doing 2 ounces. Next, we're gonna be bringing in some tartness with 3/4 ounce of lemon juice. And next, we're gonna bring in a bit more floral essence with 2 dashes of lavender bitters. And our final ingredient is our golden luster dust. You really don't need a lot for this, maybe just about a teaspoon at that. And I mean, if you're going to be making it yourself, you can kind of experiment with how much you want. Sometimes if you put a little too much in there, it will kind of leave residue in the glass. So basically you can start low and then kind of gradually build up to get the final product you're looking for. Let's go ahead and throw some ice in the shaker and shake to chill. Next, you are going to be serving this straight up into a chilled martini glass, and we are going to be double straining this just to make sure no unnecessary ice shards make it into the glass. All right, so now you have your bright and shiny Djinn's Oblivion. All right, let's go ahead and give it a taste test. This is a bit of a different one for sure. I don't usually toy around with that licorice anise flavor just because I'm not a huge fan of licorice. But paired with the coconut water and especially the lemon makes this a really bright cocktail that only has kind of an underlying taste of that licorice, but it pairs so well with it. It's not an overpowering main player kind of thing going on. Everything is really kind of balanced. The forefront of your taste will probably come from the lemon juice, but then as that like bright tartness starts to subside, then you actually get a little bit of that licorice in there. But it's not overpowering. It's kind of just like in the tail end. You get it kind of in the back of your mouth, right at the back of your tongue kind of. And it's just a really pleasant taste, honestly. It is unique. I do think having that fruit kind of pulling everything in makes it a little bit more palatable to the average drinker. This is definitely an interesting one. I'm looking forward to actually playing around with arak a little bit more. just to kind of see what works and what doesn't. But for this, I think it works. I think if you're not a big fan of those sweet licorice type flavors, I think this is going to make it very palatable for you. And of course, the gold luster dust makes it look very unique, very bright, very shimmering. So yeah, pretty happy with how this one turned out. Now that we have our drink, let's jump straight into the review of 3,000 Years of Longing. To even wish that director George Miller's next film following Mad Max Fury Road is half the spectacle that film was, seems like an impossible ask. That film's high-octane, no-holds-barred mania has instead been traded for something softer and quieter this time around. Based on a collection of 1990s mythical short stories, 3,000 Years of Longing finds a lonely British scholar named Alethea stumbling across a small glass jar containing a real-life genie. The genie explains his usual shtick, 3 wishes and all that jazz, but Alethea is actually more interested in hearing about the Djinn's past life, so the two sit down and share an intimate conversation on love, longing, and desires. Told primarily in flashbacks, the first half of this film really encapsulates the pivotal theme of the film, which is the importance of stories. The Djinn's 3 stories feel familiar in their fantastical nature, giving this film the feeling of a long-forgotten wonder. They almost feel like old Hollywood, highlighting some beautiful fantasy imagery with vibrant colors and incredibly detailed costume design. The tales themselves are filled with some real old-school story elements like the cautionary warning of getting what you wish for and cruel, darkly poetic irony. It also helps that we are guided through these stories by an incredibly baritone and seductive Idris Elba as the genie. Him and Alethea, portrayed by Tilda Swinton, have a pretty solid back and forth as the genie continuously pressures her to make her wishes so he can be free, but Alethea stands firm in her self-denying stance that she has nothing to wish for. The film is incredibly patient in its storytelling, allowing you to really meditate on the film's themes, as well as the impact that technology and advancements will play in holding our attachment to stories. It also manages to be intimate and contained while also managing to be bombastic and grand as well. This is some of the finest visual storytelling I've seen this year, and no doubt we were potentially robbed of an even grander adventure thanks to a certain virus that shan't be named. But what we do get from these stories is unchained wonderment that lends itself to fantastical and sometimes frightening moments of pure mythological madness. However, these stories of myths and loves lost eventually end, as all stories do, which leaves us with what I think can be considered the film's main story, the happenstance romance that sparks between Alethea and the Djinn. For me, this is where the film began to lose me. The story now relies on the romance between our 2 characters, but I never really found it to be all that compelling, and honestly it seemed a bit forced. The lessons and themes of the Djinn's life stories don't really seem to come full circle in the end, opting to introduce new ideas that are hastily rushed through to reach an ending that truthfully fell flat for me. I love the concept of this being all about the smaller stories that fuel their hotel room conversation. And once it departs from that concept, it struggles to both enthrall and tantalize. I don't really feel this needed to be a romance film, truthfully, as I think the core idea that stories are not just windows into the past, but windows into ourselves that we can lend to what we don't fully understand, is perfectly strong enough. The third act really slows this film down, faking you out just when you think it's over, only to realize that there's more the film just has to show you. Regardless, it's still a shame how this film was mishandled in the advertising, or should I say its lack thereof. I saw absolutely no press for this film since the trailer dropped, and honestly, I think it's a huge disservice to one of the most unique visual storytellers working today in George Miller. If you have the patience to sit down and take in some old-fashioned mythos, I think the first 2/3 of this film are spectacular, with striking fantasy imagery, solid performances, and truthfully, one of my favorite scripts of the year. I don't want to say you should skip the third act altogether, as if anything, it will make you appreciate the beginning more. It's just a shame to see the film come so close, only to lose its footing. Just remember, if you want more of these big blockbuster films from directors like Miller, such as his upcoming Furiosa prequel, you at least have to do them a solid and check out their weirder, more off-the-wall passion projects. I mean, there's a 20-foot tall, naked Idris Elba constantly radiating sensual heat. Not gonna find that in Mad Max. For my rating, I'm giving this film 3.5 genie lamps out of 5. It's closer to a 3 than a 4, but it's still worth a watch. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of The Martini Shot. If you saw the film, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And if you like what you saw here and would like to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me on all social media accounts. Those links are down in the description below. And if you're interested in more movie reviews and movie-themed cocktails, be sure to check out my website, martinishot.blog. Until next time, thank you again for watching. I will see you in the next one. Live deliciously, but please remember to drink responsibly.